Welcome to This Week in History with Mike and Will. I'm Mike.
I'm Will.
And we discuss a thing in history every week. We discuss what happened this week in history some time ago.
Yes.
Will looks it up and talks to me about it, and he's got 1 hour to explain it to me.
Right.
And then we can all learn a thing or two. Mm-hmm. And if you like it, subscribe.
Tell your friends about it.
Put that at the end. All right.
Yeah, we usually do, but we'll talk about it before.
Sure will.
Like and subscribe things.
All right.
There's the hour.
Yeah, 1 hour. What are we talking about before I flip the thing?
Today we're talking about the Battle of Culloden.
Battle of Culloden?
Culloden.
In April 16th, 1746.
74-5.
1745.
That's what mine says.
No, somewhere in there.
It would be weird if it was in 1746 because it's part of the Rising of 1745, and that's what we're going to talk about. Ha! I talked about a thing before my hour started.
That's okay.
I'm shooting.
That's fine. But I did delay in this because Will just saw for the first time the sound that this makes.
Yes, it's amazing.
And it will continue to make that sound until someone complains. Someone not Will.
Outstanding.
Go, you've got 1 hour.
All right, the Battle of Culloden. What is this? Where did it take place? Why am I talking about it? What's the importance? So, this, like you said, took place April 1745.
Yes.
In the moors of Culloden.
The Moors.
The Moors.
What are the Moors? I've heard of the Moors.
There's two types of Moor.
Yeah.
There's the capital M Moors, who are the people.
Okay.
They're from North Africa.
Yep.
They are, I think, 100% Muslim.
Okay.
There might be Christian Moors. That's a possibility.
That one seems optional.
I think it's optional. And then there are the landscape of a moor, which is in Scotland.
I always pictured it as kind of a foggy, swampy thing.
That's almost exactly what it is.
Okay.
It's kind of boggy, wetland. You can't farm on it. You can't really do much with it. It looks really cool. It's like home to like all kinds of wildlife, waterfowl, pretty flowers and stuff like that.
In my mind, it's not a good place for murders.
It's a great place to die.
Or for ghosts to haunt.
Yep, the
or
moors.
Wisps to float around.
They're almost impossible to do anything with them because they're in the highlands, so it's really hard to drain.
Oh.
So they're just kind of there. It's boggy, it's swampy, it's gross.
They're in the highlands, so
yes.
it's hard to drain?
If it's because it's up high already.
So they can't drain.
So
I think it'd be easy
it's
to
like hacking into stone and stuff. There's like this foundation under it. You can't just go.
Is that where also they get the peat bogs and
there
stuff?
There are peat bogs and stuff like that in the moors.
Where they do the whiskey and scotch?
Yep, and they use it for saltpeter.
There you go. So many things I'm learning. All right, we have
also again, great place to get rid of a body because the peat bogs break down the calcium in bones.
Okay, good pro tip there.
Pro tip: gonna get rid of it. Well, it's factually kind of important because it's hard to find, like in old battlefields, if they fought in like a peat bog, you have no artifacts left because everything just gets broken down. It's very acidic over time. It's not like if you step in it, your leg will melt off, but like if you sat there for a year, you'll have some damage.
Interesting.
Peat bog. So this was in Culloden Moor, which is in Scotland, so that's north of England. And the reason why we're talking about this is because it ties into a lot of stuff we've talked about before.
Oh boy.
So we have to go kind of way, way back to talk about what this is all about. Why am I bringing this up? We have to go back to Elizabeth, Queen Elizabeth I.
Yes.
So when Queen Elizabeth died, she didn't have like an heir. She didn't have a son because she was never married. She never had children. She was the Virgin Queen.
Sure. Oh, I'm sorry. To interrupt. No. Where is Scotland at this point in history in relation to England?
This all ties into that. Yes.
Okay.
So, at the point of Elizabeth, Scotland's its own kingdom, has its own king.
Yeah.
We talked about the James Stewart.
Oh, yes.
That whole thing.
Yeah, sure.
Jimmy Stewart. So there was Mary Queen of Scots.
Okay.
Well, when Elizabeth died, she gave the throne to her nephew, James, who was the king of Scotland.
Yeah.
Well, now he's also the king of England.
Oh, yeah.
So he was James the 6th of Scotland, but James the 1st of England. So he's literally listed as James the 6th and 1st.
Okay.
It's... I didn't actually know about this because I'd only ever seen him listed as like James the 1st. It's James the 6th and 1st.
6th and 1st.
And 1st. And he was, weirdly enough, he was a Catholic. There were concerns that he was Catholic and taking over after a Protestant queen. They're like, oh, this is going to cause a problem.
Okay.
And like I said, fairly certain he was Catholic because he was raised by a Catholic mother, but he was very understanding towards Protestants. And this is the guy that the gunpowder plot tried to blow up.
Yes.
Yes, and they missed. They failed because they were Catholic extremists and they wanted to kill him because they were. That was it. He's actually he's a Protestant, but raised by Catholics. That was it. Sorry. He has Catholics in his family who are named James, so I get confused. Sorry.
The main thing I know about Catholics and Protestants in England, Ireland, and Scotland is I don't know anything about. I don't know what their problem is with each other, but they sure don't seem to like each other.
They do not like each other at all. The difference is literally just it's the same religion.
Yep.
Just some different opinions about who's in charge.
Really sounds like the fight sounds too strong for the disagreement.
Yeah, right.
It's like,
well, there's a lot of bloodshed.
I prefer pepperoni on my pizza. Oh, sausage, murder.
Yes. It's literally like the Church of England, the Anglican Church, is the main Protestant faith of England, and they're like the king's in charge or the queen, whoever's the current head of state.
Yep.
And the Catholics are like the Pope's in charge. But there's a lot of like bad blood involving the Catholic Church, like overreaching or the Crusades or things like that.
Also, to be sure, if anyone's watching and is one or the other camps and really like strongly, I don't have an opinion.
Neither do I. Neither of us are.
You do you.
We just don't think you should kill people over violence, or religion. Like honestly, if it's like you say all the time, if you need to kill somebody because your religion is so good. Maybe not such a good religion. Just saying. Don't do it. Also, super illegal. Still murder.
Yeah.
Just,
it's one of the top 10, I think.
Believe in all of them. That's like a number. Do not kill other people. Unless you start finding exceptions.
Loopholes. All right.
They don't count as people.
Here we are in Scotland.
So in Scotland.
With the king of two countries.
He's in two countries, yeah. And so he inherits this position of he's the son of a very famous Catholic woman, and he inherits from a very fiercely Protestant queen.
Okay.
So he's kind of caught in the middle. He was raised Catholic, but he is Protestant.
Okay.
This makes the gunpowder plot happen because they're like, Protestant, he's going to kill all the Catholics. Because that happened. Right. Catholics were killed, Protestants were killed. And James, though, was like, I got no problem with anybody. I just want to rule everybody equally. Like, I want to make Scotland great again and make England great again.
You got nice golf courses there.
We can have nice. It's kind of nice. Make England great again. Mega. But no, he was considered. He wasn't controversial. He didn't come in and just say let's kill everybody who's different than us. He didn't pass a lot of nasty laws. And he was largely well-liked and well-respected. He was a younger guy. And he was Elizabeth's hand-picked successor, so that's usually a good thing. But the extremists want him out. It caused a bunch of problems. He kind of cracked down. But certain members of his family ended up being Catholic. There were no laws that said they couldn't be. So James is the first head of the English House of Stuart, is what it's called. The House of Stuart. His son, Charles I, became king, and he had a huge feud with Parliament and said, I'm the boss, you all suck. So they had a civil war.
Who did that?
Charles I. Charles I, James's son. Charles lost the war to a fellow named Cromwell.
Who's
Cromwell. Kind of infamous throughout history because he started off as, well, he was a straight up, what are they called? What were the Pilgrims?
Puritans?
Puritan. He was a Puritan. He had like the hat and the buckled shoes.
What was his first name?
Is that Oliver? Oliver Cromwell.
I didn't know.
Because there's a James Cromwell and an Oliver Cromwell. They're very different.
James Cromwell is the actor, right? Who's the actor?
There is. There's a lot of Cromwells, actually.
Sure there are.
But yeah, so Oliver Cromwell fights him and beats him, and they execute Charles for treason.
Oh.
This is a big deal, which we'll probably eventually talk about.
He started the war?
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah. Well, they said, you're a tyrant. So they killed him and then said he's a traitor.
Oh.
Apparently you can be a king of the country and also be a traitor to the country.
But he started the war? He started the fight?
I think Cromwell actually did. He started basically. He won the rebellion though, so you get to make the rules.
Yeah, I guess after you win, you can do what you want.
They go through a period with no king. Then eventually, the people don't like that. Cromwell's a jerk. He starts seizing the reins of power by himself.
Oh, so he's not a king, but he's running.
He's running. He calls himself the Lord Protector.
Fancy.
Didn't go well. Charles II Charles I's son,
Okay.
he takes power. And he's much more moderate. I think Parliament has more power than me. I'm fine with that.
He takes power, and the people are okay with that, even though
His dad was killed
for treason.
for treason, which was a trumped-up charge, is how
Sure,
people saw it.
Yeah.
And basically, he takes power and says, my dad took things too far, and he was tyrannical. I
Real-
don't want to be that.
Real sorry about the
Also, I don't want you guys to kill me next.
Oh, can you imagine the number of times that leaders have had to apologize for their dads? Like, I'm sorry.
Yep. Historically,
Dad, I don't
Yep.
know.
My
I'm
dad's-
not like that.
My dad is just the worst.
So how did Cromwell take this?
Well, he was deposed, and I think he was executed.
Oh, how did?
I have to check. That's another thing we have to study is just that whole Civil War thing. That's
okay.
not my wheelhouse.
So,
much.
but I mean, when you say Charles II took power, he
was given it. The Parliament gave it to him.
Oh, Parliament.
There was no war.
Oh.
When Cromwell was ousted basically by Parliament, and they were like, "This guy's actually worse."
So he got kicked out by paperwork.
He got kicked out by paperwork.
Nice.
And so Charles comes in and he's like, "Yeah, guys, I've been gone a while. I was in Scotland because that's where I live too, and they didn't want to kill me. What's up?" And they're like,
Hey.
"We would like for you to be the replacement and your king, take over for your dad." He goes,
Let's do that king thing again. We like that.
"But you're not gonna kill me." And they're like, "No, but we want you to sign this that says Parliament technically holds higher authority than you."
Oh.
And he says, "Yeah, sure, that's fine.
Okay.
That's fine."
That's the
The
similar,
will of the people.
The similar format as England now, right?
Yes. Yeah, this really starts to set up the whole constitutional monarchy.
Constitutional monarchy.
More
That's
solidly.
the phrase.
At the time, though, this is kind of the beginning of the end for the monarchy having like all this power, right? And that's why Charles I was killed, is he wanted to fight that. He was like, "No, the king is supreme authority, absolute monarchy," and the Parliament was like, "No, we've been working really hard for centuries to slowly." Wean ourselves off of this.
Also, your opinion is fairly suspect.
Yes, yeah.
Well, I think the king should be in charge of everything.
And it's like, well, of course you'd say that because you're the king. And he's like,
Well-
well, do you have a problem with that?
and I still think it.
And in the famous movie Cromwell, just to paint the picture, the guy who plays King Charles, the most uptight king like ever, is Sir Alec Guinness, who played Obi-Wan Kenobi originally. So he's, "Hello, I am the King Charles of England, and you can't tell me what to do. May the force be with you.
Oh, he surely
Die
didn't
in a
say
fire."
that.
And
It was a pretty good Alec Guinness, though.
That was I'm surprised. I didn't think it was going to hold up.
Nice.
Thank you. And the guy who plays Cromwell is Richard Harris, who was the first Dumbledore in Harry Potter.
Sure.
50 points. I can't do a young Richard Harris. It's really hard to do.
Yeah, Richard Harris is tricky.
He's Irish, but doesn't come off as Irish.
Yeah.
He's one of those kind of like a Peter O'Toole, where he's
Yeah.
Irish, but he's just like, "Nope, I'm going to be English because I want to make money."
As far as tangents go, it's tricky to impersonate somebody. You got to find like that little hook
Yep.
of them. I can usually only impersonate people
Who have a
impersonating somebody else.
Yep. Or somebody who has a really obvious.
Sure.
Like Alec Guinness is
Jimmy
very.
Stewart.
Jimmy Stewart, Arnold Schwarzenegger,
Sure.
Christopher Walken, those kinds of guys who have very distinct
All right.
voices.
I didn't
Anyway,
want to
moving on.
I didn't like that tangent at all.
I liked it. I thought it was a good tangent.
Okay.
Sorry if that made you so upset.
Stay in Scotland.
We're staying in Scotland. We're in Scotland. You have very distinct voices.
Yeah.
Good
It's the
stuff.
first one.
So Charles II takes over.
Yep.
He's considered not a bad king.
Sure. Well, he's not doing full.
He's not
king
considered like
duties.
the greatest king ever.
Okay.
But he's not bad.
Okay.
After him comes.
There is for sure a sliding scale on kings.
Yeah, it
like,
moves.
oh, this is a great king. Well, he's not murdering us.
Yeah. You have to do a lot of compare and contrast.
Right.
Like anytime, like, oh, he was like Richard the Lionheart, great king of England, monster. Spent a total of like 3 weeks in England. I think at max 6 months of his reign was spent in England. Of his life, 6 months.
It's on the road.
He spoke French. He didn't speak English. He hated England.
Got things
But
to do.
people were like, he's great. Let's make him the Robin Hood hero.
Oh, okay.
And he's a monster. He just liked fighting and killing people. But he was considered great because
he wasn't around much.
He wasn't around much. And
It's like you really love your absentee dad.
he didn't kill a lot of English people.
Right.
He killed a lot of other people. So
Yeah,
that
okay.
was cool for them.
Sure.
So James VII comes along.
James VII.
After Charles dies. This is his son. And James is not his father, and he's kind of a dick.
Uh-oh.
He's also very, very Catholic.
Oh.
Protestants don't like this. Parliament doesn't like this.
Do we have a year here where are we getting closer to the event?
We are in 1685. This is the whole start of this uprising.
Got a ways to go.
So James VII he's crowned. He's the king.
Yep.
James VII / second. He's the seventh and second.
Oh no. They gotta fix that.
I just take the
just
V.
for bookkeeping purposes.
At least it's convenient that it's just minus the V.
I guess.
So it's the V I / I.
Oh, I just started writing the
no, you gotta do the Roman one. So then James II is James VII. Just add a V. It's unnecessarily complex.
Yes, it is.
But it does help clarify because there's so many Jameses.
Oh, sure.
And they're all over the place. Well, he gets kicked out. Basically, like Parliament comes up to him and say, "We don't like you. My friend doesn't like you either.
Oh no,
I have the death sentence." Like they just don't. They just tell him we're
not
done.
Sure why Scotland is Tatooine.
I don't know why. It's because Alec Guinness was the king.
Fair enough.
A wretched hive of scum and villainy. I just feel like that's how he feels about Scotland.
Sure, yeah.
Scotland's not. Scotland's very nice.
Put him on my list of places to go.
Except downtown Glasgow is apparently it used to be like the hardest city in the world. Like, you better walk around with like glass covering your knuckles and just ready to throw. I
feel like we'd be okay.
I think we'd be.
Yeah. Anyway.
But that was just its old reputation.
Sure.
Billy Connolly used to talk about that.
Oh, sure.
Glasgow's crazy, and just go on about it.
Yeah. So is downtown New York.
Yeah, exactly. Places change, people get better, whatever. So, James is approached by Parliament who are like, "We don't like you, but we like your daughter."
Oh, that's
Mary.
I'm assuming they phrased it differently, but
no, and sign this.
Okay.
And he was forced to abdicate the throne for his daughter and William the Orange. That's the House of Orange. He wasn't.
Sure.
My name's William. I'm
Orange. I didn't assume that, but all right.
And he was Dutch. He's from the Netherlands, and he was very powerful landowner. I believe he was basically. They didn't have a king. It was the Dutch Republic at this time, but he's a very powerful guy. He's a stadtholder, is what that's called.
Who is he to marry? Are they married?
They married. And they seem to have a really good relationship.
This is James's daughter?
James's daughter, Mary, and her husband, William.
How old are they about then? Are they adults now?
They're adults. She's in her early 30s.
Oh, okay.
Or maybe late 20s.
Oh, so there's a chunk of time has gone.
Yes. So James loses power in 1685. He becomes king. In 1688, they make him abdicate.
Oh,
he's already a full-grown adult by the time his daddy dies. It's kind of like the Prince Charles thing.
Yeah.
Not that old, but
right.
He was an adult
but
by
not
the time.
a child king.
But not a child king, yes. Because we've had so many child kings.
That's why I was asking.
Yep. So James is older when he's ousted, and that's probably why, because they had his whole life so far that they'd seen. We're like, no. When you were the Prince of Wales, you sucked. And you're gonna suck as king. And
I feel like they could have nipped this in the bud faster, though, instead of waiting 2 or 3 years.
I think they waited, honestly, because
maybe he'll be an okay king.
Maybe. But so they basically, Parliament set this up. They talked to William and Mary, which is a college now. William and Mary. It's a very famous college. It's a very good college.
Yeah. It's my parents' names as well.
Oh. It's my grandmother's name. That's my first name. And my aunt's name is Mary.
Mr. and Mrs. College.
Mr. and Mrs. College. William and Mary College.
Yep. That's their name. That's my maiden name.
College. Ezra Khan is just a.
Yeah, I got married to.
Yeah, to an Ezra Khan.
Yep.
Okay, nice. I feel like you're lying.
Somewhere along there.
Somewhere in there is a lie. Her name wasn't Mary. It was Margaret. Anyway, so William and Mary come into power, and it's called the Glorious Revolution because they bring an army by sea because Parliament's like. We might have some problems with the royalist military. They might not agree to this. When they land, there's like not a shot fired. They're basically hailed as heroes by the majority of people.
What's it called? The Glorious
Revolution.
Revolution.
And like I think some people die in like scuffles, but there's no battles fought. There's no purging of anything. There's no crazy stuff that happened.
Glorious revolution.
And it was a glorious revolution, so I called it that because it was. Relatively, I mean,
we should do all our revolutions like this.
Yeah, if you do a revolution right, this is how they go.
Sure.
They don't murder everybody. They don't murder
so
anybody.
Why weren't there people there Do they like
Basically, Parliament did a great job selling the idea.
Yeah, there was
Parliament sold the idea, and Mary was very popular. She was beloved of the people. William was super respected in continental Europe as he was a landholder of great renown. He was a brilliant politician. He was very wealthy.
But to the point,
he was very respected.
They didn't have to necessarily show up with force. So.
They didn't have to, but they did just in case. But a lot of them were British.
I should bring my army with me.
Well, and a lot of the soldiers were English, though. They went over and they're like, we're bringing our queen back with us. They also had his guys, who were Dutch, and the Dutch had been fighting basically nonstop for like the last 300 years.
Really?
Yeah, the Dutch military is very...
I've never heard anything about the Dutch military.
Dutch military at this time is one of the most efficient fighting forces on the planet.
Maybe that's why I haven't heard
Just
about it.
because there aren't a ton of them, but they have a ton of money. And they basically just sit there while Spain tries to conquer them, and they just shoot the Spanish all day. That's and they get very good at it.
What do you want to do today? Shoot the Spanish.
Shoot the Spanish. I guess we'll just keep shooting them.
That was
They're
a
coming
Dutch-
to Antwerp. We'll shoot them.
Dutch accent.
It's a Dutch accent. It's good. So William and Mary have the Glorious Revolution, right? And it goes off really, really well.
Sounds great.
But this displaces James. James is not killed. James is just sent into exile.
Okay.
So he goes into exile, and he pouts a lot.
Oh.
A lot.
Oh.
And he has a son who is also Catholic,
Okay.
and he goes with him.
And
And
both
he
pout
pouts
together.
a lot. Guess what his son's name is?
James.
Yes.
Great. James the 8th and 3rd.
It would be, but he's only ever known as James Francis Edward Stuart.
Oh.
Only. So William and Mary rule for jointly. Like it's the people were like, oh, well, this is cool.
Wow.
The queen is considered. They didn't want this to be like a foreigner came in and took over with an English queen. It's joint rule. But she got smallpox and died 5 years later, and it was devastating for William. He was miserable.
Yeah,
but
no one wants to
but
see
the
that.
people liked him a lot,
Okay.
so they didn't depose him.
That's good.
They liked him. They kept him in power, even though he's a foreigner.
Sure.
And the Dutch and the English have a really good relationship. Like they've helped each other out. They're two Protestant
Boats
states.
and money, I bet.
Boats and money, but also Protestants who fought against like Catholics trying to conquer their countries.
Okay.
They both hated Spain at the same time. They
It's
both
good-
hated
good
the
to have
Holy
a
Roman Empire.
mutual hatred.
Yeah, that was a big part of it. They both like fought the Pope at the same time in different matters.
Sure.
And the English helped with Dutch independency and making them their own state.
Okay.
So they have a great relationship.
Sounds nice.
Well, William eventually passes away. He's a little older,
Yep.
and the life expectancy isn't like a million. So in the early 1700s, he dies. I think it was like 1702. He didn't outlive Mary by too much. She died in 1694, which is unfortunate because she only ruled for 5 years.
Yeah.
But after this, though, they're like, well, we gotta figure out who gets the crown. Well, we're not giving it back to James because he's a jerk, and we're not giving it to his son because he's just like his father.
Right, yeah.
So they give it to Mary's sister,
Oh.
Anne. And Queen Anne is delightful. Everybody likes Queen Anne.
Mm-hmm.
Queen Anne this is now when things really change with Scotland and England, and we stop having the 6/1 stuff. Because
the paperwork
it's
was
just
too much.
Which one is he? He's the 6th. The first time there was a 6th, and the second time there was a 6th.
Oh boy.
He's the 6th too. The 66. No. 6, 2, whatever. It's just this whole nonsense. So Anne takes over.
Yep.
And she passes the Acts of Union. These were two separate acts passed, one in England and one in Scotland, that say we're the same country now. So in 1701,
About time, man. Let's hope that sticks.
in 1701, 1707, this gets passed.
1707.
1707. So pretty early on in her reign, she's like, we're all the same country now. This is stupid.
Have you guys seen? We're doing the same
we
thing.
have cross-pollination of people.
Yeah.
We just have different but we got different cultures in England already too.
Sure, yeah,
You
yeah.
guys do your thing. We'll
You've
do
been
our
to
thing.
Liverpool. That's different.
That's different. You've been to Wales,
Yeah.
because Wales is part of England at
Yeah,
this point too, and
sure.
they do not speak the language in Wales.
But they do technically.
But they do
theoretically.
Technically,
All right.
they're also the first and purest Britons. They're the only ones that are actually.
No,
Britain.
so they probably say you don't speak the language.
Well, they don't speak Britain,
Yeah.
but they don't speak English. Like that's just it's They're their own thing. Wales is
we're not
its
talking about
own
Wales.
thing.
We'll talk about
them
Wales
some other time.
Yep.
I can't pronounce. When I learn how to pronounce Welsh things,
Yeah.
then we'll talk about Wales.
It does look like a really, if you knew how to speak Welsh, that you'd also be really good at Scrabble. Like big word scores.
Big word scores.
Yeah.
So big words. Because it's 17
When you
consonants
spell
in
the
a
word
row.
dog, that's 500 points.
Yep. Well, you didn't do it. I did it in Welsh. Cheating. So the acts of union are passed.
Yes.
England and Scotland become Great Britain. And then the Act of Settlement was passed in 1701 that said no more Catholic monarchs. It's not allowed. It causes friction.
Okay.
So we'll just make it a rule. From
No
now
more-
on, because we have our own Church of England, you have to be Church of England.
So there are no. Oh, so then.
So from 1701 on, there has not been a Catholic monarch. They've been exclusively Protestant, and I believe exclusively follow the Church of England, because they're also the head of the Church of England.
Yeah.
So you can't have a Catholic being in charge of a different religion kind of a thing. They're like,
Yes.
that works at cross purpose, and we don't
They're
want
not
it.
necessarily outlawing.
You can be a Catholic.
You can be, but it's.
You just
not-
can't be the king.
Yeah.
That's the rule.
So I mean, they're not. They're not outlawing.
No.
Being a Catholic.
No.
But they kind of are.
They kind of are. They're putting
They are
I
for
mean,
sure.
it's not like you can move into kingship.
Right.
Like, that's not an upwards. There's a cap on upwards mobility.
Yeah.
Like, nobles can still be Catholics, but a lot of them couldn't serve on Parliament until like the 1800s. You couldn't be Catholic and be in Parliament.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of like, it's not illegal, but life's not going to be easy for you.
What was that called?
That was the
Act
Act of
of-
Settlement. We're settling the issue. There would be no more Catholics in power to cause more rebellion. Yes.
And you Catholics disagree? Shut up.
Shut up. This is why the Empire has British voices.
Well, yeah.
There would be no more rebellion here.
I think there's a different reason for that.
Also, yes. But
'Cause
anyway.
space is English.
Space is English. That's a fact. That's actually an indisputable truth. Because nobody on this show could dispute it. None of you
True.
are here. So, after this, though, Anne eventually dies, and she doesn't have kids.
Oh, whoops.
And the closest relative she has
James.
is James.
Hey, I'm
And
back,
he's
baby.
a Catholic.
Ow.
So he's immediately disqualified.
Oh, you made up a stupid rule.
The only family member that she has is her cousin. Her cousin is not even English. He's German.
Oh. Mm.
Yeah, this
That's
goes
not
back
gonna
like
sit well with anybody.
this goes back several generations
So,
to
what do you
one
prefer?
of Elizabeth's, I think, cousins married into this royal house.
So what do you prefer, a Catholic or a German?
So this German guy, King George, is crowned.
They did.
He creates the House of Hanover, which ruled until Queen Victoria died.
Oh.
But they're Germans.
Was he German?
He's from Germany. He born and raised in
Speak
Germany.
German?
Spoke German. I don't think he spoke English.
Is George a
not
German
much.
name?
Yes. Well,
But
there's
yeah,
a
you
German
gotta-
version
You
of
gotta
it.
say it German?
Yes, I think it's Georg.
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 It's hard to say. It's hard to say George angry.
Yep.
George.
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 George. That
Hello.
bloody. You have to say it as an Englishman. George. By George.
Yeah, but I'm trying to be George, the
German.
German guy.
It's a German named George. Yeah.
Doesn't sit well with it.
But I think this is the Anglicanized pronunciation. They didn't want
Okay.
like Heinrich.
Bad enough he's German. We don't need to.
Yeah, it's bad enough. We'll just call him
Advertise
George.
it.
And he's like, it's not my name.
But I will be a
that's what-
king.
but I'm your king anyway.
Okay, King George.
So King George becomes
First George.
first George. King George the First.
Sometimes I don't learn new things.
Mm-hmm.
I learned a new thing. I didn't know that we had a German king in
The
England.
entire line of Georges, like Fat King George that everybody hated in America, German.
Huh.
So this is all starting to line up. Okay,
It
now
is.
we're starting to have like crossovers towards our own history with issues with the Georges and the Parliament. and all this
Georges.
stuff. So while all of this is going on, Scotland's pretty cool with everything. There's some issues at first with like overall,
Yes.
but
Scotland, classically known for cool heads.
but here's the problem though is there's and I said generally
Yes.
the Highlands are not.
No.
The Highlands are almost always a problem spot. So we're talking like border area is fine because there's so much crossing over.
Sure. Yeah.
But Scotland has what begins to be called the Jacobite movement. Jacobite is Latin for Jacobus. Jacobus is Latin for James.
Do not spell it. Oh, Jacobite. Okay.
Yep, Jacobite. Jacob, I-T-E.
Yeah.
Jacobite. So what happens is these guys are really pissed off that their line of kings, the Stuarts, suddenly don't have any power.
Yeah.
They're like, hey, James was our guy and you kicked him out and then you put his daughter in charge, but she's got a Dutch husband. What's this crap? Yeah. And they're very upset about it, which is understandable to an extent, right? Like, we were finally in.
Yeah.
And now we're not.
And now we totally aren't.
And now, so
some German guy.
There are some uprisings in the Jacobite movement.
Okay.
That start almost immediately after James is ousted. The Jacobites are like, no. And they have several uprisings. There's a big one in, I think, the 1690s. And then there's another one in like 1716 and then 1717. And then it's quiet for a while.
Okay.
All right. So
I assume none of these had any traction.
They didn't really know. It was mostly like to say, hey, we're mad at you.
Yes.
There were raids. There were some battles.
Yeah, we know.
There were some raids and there were some battles. But this movement persists.
Sure.
Now, in Scotland, now we have to talk about how Scotland does things. Scotland still has what's called the clan system. The clan system is basically feudal leadership.
Okay.
There's a clan leader who usually has like a castle or an estate. He leases out all of his lands to what are called tackmen, who are kind of like the middle class.
Okay.
And then they sublet all of their land to kind of the peasant class. Clans all claim to have like a singular, they're related usually. Or they take the same name a lot of the time to show that they're the same relation. They wear very similar colors a lot of the time. They have like clan colors. The concept of like the tartan, you know, the kilt.
Yeah.
That didn't get like formalized until after all of this stuff gets done. Like the 19th century is when they really formalized it. Okay. But it was a thing. They wore tartan, they wore kilts, they wore this big sash thing.
Yeah, you want to know who's on whose team.
Yeah, they had a common style, they had a common ancestry, a common culture, music, society, and they largely come from the land of screw England. Like, they just like to fight.
We come from the land of screw England.
Well, they have this proud history of just fighting them.
Yeah.
And they don't always win, but they will always fight.
But it's a matter of principle.
It is a matter of principle, you know. And these are the guys who, like, they fought against, like, the name of Edward the Longshanks still sticks with them. This guy they called him the Hammer of the Scots because he just beat the Scottish to a bloody pulp. And then they rose up with like William Wallace and Robert the Bruce and fought and won and made Scotland a kingdom. And then it kind of persisted for a while. And now they're just kind of part of England. And they were like, that's fine because it's our king who's sitting on the throne.
Yep.
But now he's not our king anymore.
We're less fine with this. We were fine with it.
Things were going so well. we thought we turned a corner. And seems like we've gone back down into being second-class citizens.
Now, does Scotland... Okay, but Scotland have any, like, big centralized... At least not Glasgow.
Well, yep, they have Edinburgh Castle.
But as far as, like...
Inverness is big, but compared to, like, London... Population-wise, they're nowhere near what England is. It's a very rocky terrain. Farms aren't as prevalent.
But it's got to be hard to be like, we would like to be the ones in charge.
Yeah, but you're like the minority running them. No. We have all the money. We have all the people. You're not in charge of anything.
Go play some golf.
You know, where's your fleet? Oh, you got like... Angus has a ship. He's got a boat.
Ship.
How big is his boat? 10 foot? He brings in
It's
trout.
a good boat.
It's a good boat. Don't you make fun of Angus's boat. Blood feud! War. But the clan system works really well for like gathering people together really quickly.
Oh, yeah.
Because you just go, hey, go tell all of the guys that you work for, to tell all the guys they work for, to tell all the guys they work for, come see me. And then they all do that.
Yeah.
So it's quick at like raising forces. So if the Scots get mad, they have an army in like a day.
Good for a bake sale too, I imagine.
It's great. It is actually. It's great for like the fairs and stuff like that. Events that are important. Word of mouth spreads real fast.
There you go.
But it does work really well with the raise a militia very quickly. They're not necessarily well trained. The tackmen were. That was like a point of pride for them. Is that they were very heavily armed. And liked to fight, and they were good at it. They were also often trained by going around and collecting the taxes for their lord, so they're used to beating the crap out of their Scots. These guys are big.
Is that what they're called?
guys.
The tackmen?
Tackmen was
It's not taxmen.
they had because you had your tack of land.
Oh, okay.
So it was like a tract, a chunk of land. So they were the tackmen. They owned the land.
I knew they got rid of one consonant.
They got rid of part of it. But yes, they got.
So not the taxmen.
They were not the taxmen.
The tracks
They were like the
men.
tract men. Yep. But it's just called tack.
Yes.
Each man has his tack. That was what they called it.
Yeah.
But that gave them enough money to like outfit themselves with like weapons. Most common weapons that they had were a big broadsword called a claymore.
Claymore.
Yep.
For that.
There are two types of claymore. There's the two-hander that was very common in like the later Middle Ages. Robert the Bruce is famous for his guys using them to fight the English. But by now we've got like this basket hilt over it. It's a real broad blade, big hacking weapon. And
Do you want to put another picture there, Will?
Yeah. So we're gonna put it right there. That's a claymore.
Claymore.
They used that and then what was called a targ, which is a leather shield with studs on it.
Targ?
Targ. Targe. Like a target shield.
Yeah.
And they'd use this kind of a light shield and this. They usually had a pistol. But once that's done, you need to be able to hack and slash sometimes. Because it takes a minute to reload or so. 30 seconds
sure.
maybe. So
How you got to reload while you're hacking and slashing?
exactly. So you shoot and then you draw weapons and get in close because that's better
okay.
than
So you get one shot.
Yeah, so you get your shot. A lot of them though, these guys aren't just like fighting with swords and shields and pistols. They had rifles and they had formal regiments of soldiers that were good at different things.
You got one shot.
But don't miss.
Do not miss your chance to blow.
No.
Lifetime.
Now we can't monetize this. Now you just copyright infringement.
We'll pay Eminem a couple bucks.
I'm sure he'll be fine with it.
Give him his cut.
Okay, so the clan system allows all of this to happen, and a bunch of these guys are like still mad about what happened to James.
Yeah.
So in exile, James just stews, and he passes James the 7-2.
Yeah.
He eventually dies, and his son
just pouted and died.
basically pouts himself to death and dies. James Francis Edward Stuart
Yes.
becomes he's the guy who's like, yes, fight for me, Scotland, from France.
Oh yes. You guys are doing great.
This is good.
Represent.
Good job. Well, eventually he becomes known as the
Another croissant, please. Thank you.
he becomes known as the Old Pretender because he gets old and he stops like doing anything to lead it.
Yeah.
But his son is a firebrand,
Oh.
and his son, Charles Edward. So it just keeps going. James, Charles, James, Charles, James, Charles. Like
We need a larger baby book. is what we
James,
need.
Charles, James, Charles.
Larger
That's
baby
kinda
name
how it
book.
goes. Charles, though, decides he's sick of this nonsense. He's gonna go fight for his dad's crown, i.e., his crown.
Yes.
Because that's what
That's
I'm
what
fighting for my father.
Yep.
He's referred to as Bonnie Prince Charlie.
Bonnie
He's
Prince
usually
Charlie.
considered like kind of an affable guy, according to legend.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's more ironic because he really wasn't that popular. He comes off as this aristocratic jerk. He starts gathering troops in France. Because the French and the Scots have what's called the Auld Alliance.
Oh, that's right.
AULD. It's this
Yeah.
classical, goes back centuries of them being like, we're on the same team, we fight the
both
same
don't
fights.
like England.
We both don't like England. And
Yes.
that's really the core of it. So they have some supporters there. They get professional soldiers,
What if
professional
they
French
have
soldiers.
French and Scottish fusion food?
There might be.
Mm.
Haggis is stuffed with snails instead of... It's gooey. Don't
the
like
worst of both options.
Exactly. I picked the worst foods I could think of. So Charles is getting these professional French soldiers and also Irish.
Irish don't like English.
Irish don't like English either. But also there were bands of like professional Irish soldiers fighting in France at the time because Irish mercenaries were a common thing. That was they had fighters, but they didn't have any wars to fight, and that was
We got nothing else to do.
got nothing else to do.
You want to beat up the English for a bit?
There was something to do in continental Europe, because in continental Europe, everything's on fire. There are people at war all the time. At this time, there's what's called the War of Austrian Succession, which was all about who's going to be king in Austria. And it was kind of a world war. It wasn't a world war, but it was a Europe-wide war. England largely did not stick out of it for this time. Like, England has been so busy with its own stuff, it's been out of kind of the global politics. But now they've got a German king. They have the connections to the Dutch. They have all this other stuff. So they have some skin in the game. They have a prince, the Duke of Cumberland. His name is William.
Duke of Cumberland.
He gets known to be named as William the Butcher, and we'll explain all that. He's Bill the Butcher. Goes on to just start killing everybody in New York. No, Bill the Butcher from...
And
but he's William the Butcher.
I didn't know where you were joking.
I was joking. Duke of Cumberland.
Cumberland.
He's like the third son of the king, so he doesn't have like huge prospects of... He's the spare to the spare. That kind of thing.
Is there a backup plan? But he's William the Butcher?
William the Butcher. So he's allowed and encouraged to go be a soldier. That's what he wants to do. So the king's like, I got to have one son represent the family.
Sure.
His elder brother does not like him because he wants to go be a soldier. The Prince of Wales, the heir. And they're like, no, you don't get to. So Prince George does not like Prince William. They have a feud.
Okay.
And so the Duke of Cumberland is in Europe fighting wars for fun, basically. Like he's leading British troops to fight in an alliance basically against France. And then the French are like, well, fine, we'll outfit this little rebellion guy to go over and stir up trouble in England because we're sick of the English.
Sure.
So Charles gets some French troops, some Irish troops, and then his Scottish loyalists, and he goes to Scotland and he's like, I'm going to have a hero's welcome. And like 5 guys show up. Originally, nobody's going to show up.
Did they at least have flags or something?
It was
Yay!
It was like nobody was going to show up.
Yeah.
But one nobleman who was respected showed up. I think it was, there were the Drummonds, and there was George Murray.
Thanks for coming. You probably shouldn't have had this on a Tuesday. A lot of people are busy.
We're all busy. This is,
but thanks for coming.
fair day. We're all, it's market day. Everybody's busy.
Stuff to do.
But these guys show up, and Charles is inspired. Ha-ha! Somebody showed up. I've got this nobleman, and because these guys are men of, they're not like they're respected. These guys are respected clan leaders.
That's with a C, by the way.
Yes, C. Okay. Klansmen in Scotland is okay.
That's right. Different thing.
Klansmen in America, not okay. Okay.
Okay. K is the difference.
Exactly. C. Klansmen with the C. So the Klansmen of Scotland band together and they're like, uprising, down with the English.
Yay.
Not all of them. Okay. There are a lot of loyalists in England at this time. They're like, no, we're all the same country now. We have been for like 40 years.
Yeah.
There's uprisings.
Also kind of enjoying not dying.
Yeah, they haven't had a serious uprising in 30 years with the Jacobite cause. So this is new, again. Like, this is the new one for the generation. And they gather together thousands of guys, and they start raiding. Like, old school raiding, what they used to do.
Like we used to do.
And they go south into England, and they're like, we're going to gather all of our English allies because I'm the rightful heir to the throne. Because my daddy's the rightful heir to the throne, but he's old and he's in France, so I'm the heir to the throne, and I want it back. And the English all go, nah, I'm good.
Uh-oh.
He gets like maybe 5 people to join him. It's not really good. And they call, England is just like, you know what we're going to do? We're going to get the Duke of Cumberland to handle you.
Oh, no.
So they send to Europe to get their most experienced battlefield commander who has a reputation for being, he's not called the Butcher yet. He earns it from what he does next because he is extremely well respected by the army. And when he comes back, he gets the hero's welcome that Charles wanted.
Uh-oh.
Cumberland comes in on a horse, leading some of his soldiers, and the English, yes! Parliament goes crazy. This guy's gonna save us. He's amazing. And they send him north, and it's at the head of an army. And this is when we start seeing like the red coat army type military. This is... They're starting to get that government look. Long red coats, starting to have like the tricorn hat kind of a look. This is, 30 years before the revolution. Okay. So it's fairly similar tech.
Do you know why they picked that color?
I think, well, it's because the red was always like a traditional English color.
Yeah.
They had the Red Cross on their flag. It was originally a white background with a big red cross in it. Yeah. It was the flag of England. And now that it's Great Britain, it's the big red, the Union Jack, and I don't know if that was like a royal color maybe too.
Something. At some point, someone had to be going.
There had to be like a reason. I should look into that. I'll look into that.
Because at some point though, someone had to go. They're not real easy to see.
If you viewers know why,
let
us know. But
it
also, actually,
struck me as an odd decision.
Having a distinct color was very useful in battle at the time because they had these very smoky cartridges when they shoot.
Yeah.
So it's hard to figure out who's who and what's what. So you wanted a distinctively colorful uniform.
Yeah.
People are like, well, that's really dumb because you don't blend into the surrounding. That's the point.
Ah.
You needed to fire in blocks of troops because you needed the volume of fire.
I'm gonna bet it is somehow connected to the increasing use in guns in general.
Oh, it's totally because of that. Because like throughout history, you always wanted to know what your guys looked like, what their guys looked like.
Yeah.
But now with all this smoky battlefields, you can't see anything. So you need a really vibrant color. So a lot of these uniforms that we see, I mean, some of them are white, which is the worst color for uniforms because it's just dirty. No matter what happens, you sneeze, it's dirty. You walk into a field, dirty everywhere. Red, at least if you get shot, maybe you're not too worried about it. That's why I wore my red coat today. If I get shot, no one will see it. He wears brown pants, and we all know why.
Oh.
Yeah, that's an old joke, but it's funny. So, yes, so the British start marching north, and they have this, that's the government. They call it the government army. They are ready, and a lot of these guys have been fighting professionally in Europe.
They are ready to go.
They are good at what they do.
Yeah, and the people in Scotland not as much.
The Scotland guys they're like a warrior class. That's what they see it as. And there's a difference, as we've seen throughout history, of the difference between a warrior and a soldier. Soldiers working together towards a cause will always beat an individual warrior, regardless of what he's really doing, unless there's like overwhelming numbers or they figure out like some kind of tactical or strategic advantage. But soldiers do very well because they have discipline. When the chips are going down, a lot of the time the warriors will flee. But a soldier, if he's got his buddies backing him up, they'll hold the line. And that's really important in this line of warfare. You can't just run up one at a time and back.
There is no I in team.
Exactly. And you're running towards 50 guys with rifles all going.
Doesn't matter how good you are.
You're dead.
I'm real good at a sword.
Yep. So Charles is like, this isn't going well in the south.
Nope.
I'm going back up north. Now, up north, there is like kind of this key to the Highlands. It's Stirling Castle. Stirling Castle has been fought over for hundreds and hundreds of years. William Wallace fought over it. Robert the Bruce fought over it. Edward the Longshanks tried to destroy it. And it's got this commanding view of the surrounding territory. It's got really craggy hill that it's sitting on top of.
Is that where sterling silver comes from?
I don't know. I think it's a difference. S-T-I-R. Sterling. And it's just this. It's a great fortress. It's held by loyalists to England, though. So the Scots, the Jacobites, we need this. We need this fortress.
Yeah.
So they go to take this thing, and again, because of how well it's situated. Now, this is not a medieval castle anymore. This has been modified with gun emplacements, and it has a modern crew guarding it. They have muskets, and it was bad enough when you had to charge up a hill with guys with bows and arrows. Now you've got muskets and cannon fire. This is not a great idea. Well, at least it's not probably a great
Doesn't sound fun.
I wouldn't do it. If there's 50 men in there and I have 1,000 guys, I still am not going to be like, this will be easy. Unless you have really good artillery. But this is a high uphill thing and you're trying to shoot. It's just a nightmare.
They got the high ground.
Well,
10 bullets.
Cumberland is like, they're busy. I'm going to kill them while they're fighting at this castle.
Oh.
It goes surprisingly badly for Cumberland.
Oh.
He sends his army in and it gets really confused in the heat of the battle. Nobody's really sure what's going on.
Yeah, boy.
And for a while, both sides think they lost.
Oh.
So there's like 6,000.
We both surrender.
There's like 6,000 Jacobites and a little less of the royalists fighting. And it just kind of goes awry, and the English withdraw. I shouldn't say the English, because they have a lot of Scottish with them.
Okay.
We'll call the government forces withdraw. And the Jacobites are like, should we go too? I think we should go.
It felt like we were losing.
I don't think we did very well.
I mean, they were leaving, but we should probably leave
there's
too.
like this report of, apparently the Jacobites did really well, because there's a report that there were this battalion or this group of dragoons. Dragoons are, it sounds really cool, but they're horsemen with usually a large caliber but short rifle. And bear in mind, though, almost every gun at this time is large caliber. They're like...
Yeah. Well, we can't make bullets small.
They don't know how.
Our fingers aren't nimble enough.
I think the average size was 69 caliber round.
Nice.
So the largest we use nowadays is like 50 caliber for a handheld weapon.
So these are...
So, and this is 69 is like 0.69 inches. That's how big. So this is a much bigger than a half an inch wide bullet. You know, it's this big. If you get hit with that, you're going down, and it's lead.
Dude.
And a lot of times, like sometimes they cut into them, so it would flip open as it shot out. So you get hit with like a clover shaped.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was very gross.
Yeah.
Very gross warfare. And if you didn't die from the wound, something got broken, and then you got lead poisoning, and then you die anyway. It was very brutal. So these are dragoons. These guys are riding around on horseback. They usually have like a distinctive helmet, maybe a breastplate, which were effective against firearms. And their job was ride up to something, dismount, quickly fire, and then if they had to hold the position, they could shoot and hold this position. Or they could hop on their horse and charge in with their sabers and start cutting away if they had to.
Think we got a picture of them? Let's give it a try.
We can find some dragoons.
We'll find out.
So these dragoons are like all sitting there, and apparently they got surrounded maybe because there was a report of a hail of pistol fire that was so intense that all 50 of them dropped dead. They like just got like surrounded by like the tackmen and just got annihilated.
I was not expecting that.
Yeah, and one of the English officers was like, no. First of all, that's a chunk of guys. That's cavalry. That's much more expensive.
Yep.
They're very well trained, and they just got butchered. Ugh. So that's one of the reasons why that part of the army was not doing well. Like that flank just got crushed.
We assume we're losing. All right.
So the English ran. Well, the rest of the Scottish army doesn't really know what's going on either. There's all this smoke. There's all this noise. It's just chaos. And they're like, we tied. And if the Scots had known that they won, they could have pursued this army, and it would have been a rout.
But
and it could have been an annihilation of the Cumberland army. So Cumberland withdraws, and the Scots go back to trying to take out Stirling, and they just can't crack it. And they're like, let's just go home. So they leave. Well, Cumberland...
So who's in Stirling at the time? Then?
The government soldiers. They're loyal to...
So they retreated into the...
They didn't get into it, because the Scots, the Jacobites are basically between the castle and the army.
Yeah.
And they fought the army and scared the army off, and then went back to the siege. Because they still had guys like manning the guns and shooting at the castle. But they couldn't crack it, so they just left. Well, Cumberland comes back with a bigger, nastier army. And he is much more focused. And now...
Where did you get this army from?
Well, because it's England. They have a huge army.
Yeah.
And it wasn't like they lost, like, the whole force. Because Scotland didn't... Or because the Jacobites didn't pursue them... They retreated with most of the army intact.
Okay.
They lost a few hundred men. It was a brutal fight.
Oh. So now they brought more people.
They
but
brought
also the ones that they brought.
They got some guys from the castle now.
Itching for a fight too.
And they decide, well, we'll resupply.
Okay.
Meanwhile, the Scots can only really go to the Highlands. There's not a ton of supplies there. There's no waterways that get to them. And they're like, we got to pick a ground to fight on. They bounce between different locations. And each guy has a different idea for why and how they should be here. One's like, well, you should set up here because it's really boggy terrain. They'll have to slog through the bog, and then we'll just shoot them.
Slog through the bog.
Another guy's like, well, if we hold up this position, we can defend it, and they have to come to us. I'm like, nah, we don't really like that. If we go here, we'll be like that far, and we can just shoot each other, and then it'll be fine.
So who's actually running the army here?
Charles is the nominal leader.
Okay.
And he's not a military man. He's not like some of these guys under him.
Hence all the brainstorming and...
Right. Because he's got like 3 or 4 commanders. There's an Irishman whose name I don't remember now. I probably should have written that one down. But he's like, basically each general rides to their spot and they just kind of look it around. And they're like,
okay,
the ground here sucks. I don't want to be here. Oh, I don't like this.
No one likes it. We get it.
I don't like that. Nobody likes it.
But here we are.
Well, they wind up picking like the original spot that they're planning to fight from.
All right.
Which is the moors around Culloden House.
Oh, there we go.
They set up like different lines of fire, and they have this whole plan, and then they're like, you know what we should do? We should go attack them at night.
Ooh.
And shoot them in the face, and then they'll never be able to get us, and we're going to win the war, and we'll do it in one. And
here we go.
It's a great idea, but we're on the other side of a bog.
Who's got boots?
We're fine. Let's just go. Let's just go. Let's just go.
Squish, squish, squish.
They start out late at night.
Okay. Let's into the bog, fellas.
Into a bog. Because they don't want to go any earlier because there's a fleet near enough that can spot them.
Yeah.
So they're like, well, we don't want the fleet to see us.
Right.
Because that ruins our plans. they go out in like 3 chunks, and 2 of the chunks just decide, nah,
Too deep, fellas.
we're lost. And it's their homeland. Like,
Yeah.
there's a lot of Highlanders here. Like, it's a misconception that it was all Highlanders, because there were English that were loyal to the Jacobite cause. There were Irish. There were French troops. There were Lowlander Scots there. So there's a misconception that it's all Highlanders. It's all tackmen with their broadswords and stuff. But there were formal units. There was cavalry. They had cannons. They had uniforms. A lot of them. The Highlanders typically didn't, because they fought according to clan rules. So they dressed like clan folk.
Yeah.
And that's how they fought. But I think the Highland contingent was like 40% of the army, and then everything else was just kind of a hodgepodge of different units from all over the place. And typically, like, a unit was, a captain would get a gang of guys together, hire them, and they were his dudes. He'd pick a uniform for them, a flag, their equipment, and then they all kind of worked together. So they've got all these different units, and then there's the British government, which is much more dressed, everybody's kind of the same. Well, Cumberland's army is 9,000 strong at this point, which is much bigger than it was when he was at Stirling. And the Jacobites have 5,400 men, give or take. So they're like, we need to do some damage to this guy's much bigger army.
Yeah.
2/3 of the army runs away, goes back home. Like, well, not back home, but back to like the beginning.
My socks are wet.
Exactly. And then the other third gets there, and they're like, "Where's everybody at? Oh, we didn't get the memo." So they go rushing back to their army, back through the bog, and everyone's like, "That was back stupid." And they go back. They had to go back the way they came, and it's the Scottish Highlands. It's moors, and it's rough country. Which is why it's always been so hard for, like, the English to conquer it. It's just really, really, really rough, tough country. So now the Scots are tired. They're kind of dispirited.
Wet.
They're wet. They're cold.
Smelling like
and
bog.
they're like just totally wiped. They don't want to do this now.
What were we thinking?
Cumberland shows up with the army.
We're not ready.
And attacks.
Oh.
Now he's got more artillery, so they start shelling. The Scots,
he didn't go through the bog.
He did not go through the bog. He's like, well, there's a bog, but I took my time, and I worked my way through it if I needed to. This is what we're doing.
I mean, if they had follow through, it would have been a good plan.
Yes.
No one's expecting to come
and
out
it's
of
actually said that if they had actually just all done the night attack, or even if that one guy had done it, it would have been devastating for the government.
No one's expecting.
They did not, like, nobody's dumb enough to come through the bog.
Well, now we know why.
Well, now we know why. But if they had actually pursued it, they would have caught him unawares, and this would have been a very different result. But what happens is the English have more guns, better guns, and they just start launching cannons. And by guns, I mean cannon fire.
Oh, okay.
They mostly, musket-wise, hand weapons, they're armed kind of the same.
Okay.
So they shell them for a little bit. The English say they didn't shell them for long. The Scots say they shelled them for 30 minutes before Charles said, "Go kill the English! Advance!"
No.
So the Scots advance through a bog. And as they advance, the English switch what type of shell they're using from their cannons. Normally you fire cannonball.
Yeah.
There's also a thing called a canister shot.
Oh, okay.
Which is about this big.
It's like a shotgun
filled
effect?
with ball bearings.
Okay.
Yeah. And the Scots have to advance through this, through a bog.
Ugh.
It's not, it goes that well.
Yeah,
it's not good.
It was hard going through the bog when no one was shooting at us.
This is like the day after they just tried to do a night attack.
Yeah.
It's reported that possibly as much as, like, I think it was the low end was like 10% of the army might not have even showed up. They might have been unconscious sleeping.
Oh, well,
because they were really tired and they were like ill-fed and they were poorly supplied and they might have just slept through them. Wake up later. Did we win? Oh no, I missed the battle.
Oops.
So there's all this shelling going on. Only like one side of the Scottish line gets to the enemy first, and then the other has much farther, like hundreds of yards more to go. So the English kind of go, okay, you guys die.
You can't see it.
And then, these guys, there we go. So they beat up these guys that were tagging there, and they kind of run away. And then these other guys come in, and they go, oh, well, I guess we'll beat you up too. And they shell them the whole time.
Oh.
And it's just brutal. Like, and half the officers lead from the front. So they're like the first guys, these brave men of Scotland go charging off. One guy got shot in the ankles with canister shots. These guys get chewed up and spat out pretty badly. The government troops move in and fight. And it doesn't. I think the battle lasted an hour. It was not great.
Well, it sounds like one side was way overpowered.
It was very one-sided.
Yeah.
The count at the end was the British had 50 killed. The British. I gotta stop saying that because they're all British at this point.
Yes.
The government had 50 soldiers die.
Oh.
And 259 wounded. Whereas the Jacobites had at least 1,500 to 2,000 dead or wounded, and more than 300 were captured.
This was clearer who won this
It was
one.
very clear. One-sided butt kicking. What earns Cumberland the title of Butcher is, after the battle, he takes no prisoners.
Oh.
He treats the French and the Irish as proper soldiers.
Okay.
Everyone else is considered a traitor.
Uh-oh.
Traitors die.
Yeah.
He has anyone who's wounded shot. There's
on
a
sight?
report. They're on wounded on the ground. They're just killed.
Oh boy.
They're going around stabbing him,
Yeah.
shooting him. Apparently, he was standing over a wounded guy, and he was like, "Is this one of ours?" And they're like, "No, that's
Yes, I am.
That's one of the Jacobites." And he orders the major to shoot him, and the major's like, "I am a gentleman, sir, and I do not shoot wounded men." So he hands a private a gun and says, "Kill him."
Oh, I don't
he has
care.
a private kill him.
Christ.
So it was this savage aftermath that just really dispirited him. So the Battle of Culloden was a very one-sided end of this, because the Jacobites just got crushed.
Yeah.
The Highlanders are good at dispersing, so the ones who run away just kind of fade.
Bye.
The English Parliament passes kind of if you fought in the battle or you were a Jacobite, as long as you stop,
Yeah.
because it just wasn't worth it.
Right.
But this just destroys the clan system in Scotland. They just gut it. So England does this huge crackdown. They're like, first of all, your clan land is huge and expansive, but you got it using it as farmland, and it's garbage farmland. So we're going to turn it all into pastures for sheep.
Oh.
Well, all of the Scotsmen who were farmers suddenly don't have land. And they get busted down to being what's called a crofter, which is a cottage industry. So they work and make pottery and weaving baskets and stuff. That's considered a loss of status for a lot.
That would suck.
And this has been
have your
building.
jobs switched.
This had been building for a bit, which
Yeah.
is one of the reasons why they joined this Jacobite uprising. Is it wasn't just oh yes, Bonnie Prince Charlie needs us. It was the English suck, and we don't like the new change in the government, and we're really mad, and the clan system's broken, and I don't feel represented, so I'm gonna go join this other clan and fight for this old system that really doesn't work. A lot of the lords that were on the losing side, the English didn't even bother confiscating their lands because it wasn't worth it. They said it cost them more to confiscate, to send troops in and take their territory and then resell it. So just
you can have it.
you just have it.
Okay.
We don't even care anymore. But they immediately start doing things to try to change the Highlands. They build stronger roads going in so that the next time if this ever happens again, they can just send troops by road. They start moving people out of pasture land and stop having them farm to make this for sheep and
Is that
goats
where
and stuff.
you take the high road, I'll take the low road, I'll be in Scotland
Quite.
before you comes from?
I think so.
Okay. We're not out of time, Will.
We're out of time. I'm just doing the wrap-up of all
Wrap
the
it up.
long-term effects here. Then on top of that, they start making big farms as opposed to little tenant farms. And they try to just kind of change this whole system. And over the next generation or two, it really fades. What's interesting, though, is the Scots did not, because they fought on both sides, didn't see this as an end to their traditions. Within a generation, the next King George wore tartan in a picture because he's also the King of Scotland. And he didn't see the Scottish as garbage.
Yeah.
They're part of his kingdom. He just didn't like this Jacobite uprising.
So
because
it wasn't a defeat against Scotland. It was
no,
a defeat against
it was
some Scottish.
some Scottish, right? Yeah, because there were Scottish
Sure.
loyalists who fought for the government. They were like, no, this is our king. We're all part of the same country now. You guys are fighting a fight that we lost 60 years ago when our guy got, when the king got ousted. But his daughter was still a Stuart, and her sister was still a Stuart, and it was just a different branch of the family that took over. We still got ours.
Yeah.
This isn't like somebody illegally did something they weren't supposed to do. This guy's over here pretending to be this king, and he's not even doing anything for us. I mean, he's not helping us, and we just lost a bunch of guys for basically no reason. because of how overwhelming this is, and because of how savage Cumberland was, he gets like lampooned by Parliament. They do not like him. His brother, the Prince of Wales, his not liking his brother comes back around, and it's thought that maybe he pushed the sobriquet of the Butcher. He referred to him as that.
Yeah.
So it might have been like a little bit of this, a little bit of that. Cumberland never like ascends the crown or ascends the throne or anything like that. He eventually dies of basically he got fat and had a stroke because he got shot in a previous battle and it never real healed right. Okay. So he couldn't exercise like he used to.
Oh, sure,
he dies at like...
Don't make excuses. He ate a lot.
He just ate a lot of food. He dies at like 50. But yeah, so that's like kind of the end result of this is that this is the last pitched battle in English soil. The last set piece, armies moving against each other battle. It was just... Nobody wanted to do it anymore.
So far.
Yeah. Well, yeah. There might be another one down the line. But so in 1745, ever since then... Almost 270 years, give or take, 60 years, give or take. There has not been a battle like that because, and the Jacobite risings lasted until like 1780, but that was never like this. They never, it was kind of like let's give them one for Bonnie Prince
the
Charlie.
South will rise again.
Yeah, and it was like 50 guys.
Yeah.
It was never this. It never was thousands of troops again fighting each other because it just really wasn't worth it. It wasn't worth fighting over it anymore.
Well, there we go.
So that's it.
I think we've learned about the Battle of
Culloden and the
Culloden.
Culmination of all this Anglo-Scots and then now Germany's in charge in Britain.
Sounds like you want to have the high ground, but more importantly, you want to have the bigger and more guns.
Bigger and more guns, and don't walk through the bog.
Don't walk through the bog.
Late at night, and then be like, eh.
Or if you are, go all in.
Just go all in. Commit. Don't waffle on decisions. Commit, man.
If you have any comments or thoughts on this, feel free to comment and subscribe. And you can join us next week. Next week, we'll be discussing Mutiny on the Bounty, which gives us, by the way, another continent that we're Oceania.
Yeah, that kind of counts as a continent.
Trying to get every continent from the boy.
I'm looking for good ones.
So tune in. Also, we have a special guest next week as well.
We'll have a special guest.
It'll be exciting. So that's it for now. Got anything else to say, Will?
No. Thanks for letting me run over time a little bit. There's a lot of stuff to talk about.
I blame the tangents.
Yeah, tangents, and also English history's real long, and there's a lot of Jims and Charles. You got to be real clarification for a lot of it.
Well said.
We'll
see you next week.
Bye, guys.
Bye.